Longtime buyers of fashion, Asians are now also entering the business. But how challenging is it to enter where Europeans and Americans dominate? Here in Singapore, I'm Linda Yu, and we're talking business. A warm welcome to the program. When we hear about high fashion, we associate it with European and American designers like Giorgio Armani and Ralph Lauren. Asian designers are not among the billion-dollar fashion houses. Later in the program, we hear about how the fashion scene is changing in Asia. But first, I got to speak with the head of Oscar de la Renta, one of the top names in high fashion. Known for dressing first ladies from Jackie Kennedy to Hillary Clinton, de la Renta's designs are out of the reach of most people. In the fashion business for half a century, his gowns are worn by actresses and celebrities on the red carpet. It was only a decade ago that the firm branched out into retail and moved into locations internationally. Unlike other designers such as Prada, which are owned by large conglomerates, Oscar de la Renta is still run by him and his family. I caught up with the CEO of Oscar de la Renta. Alex Bolin is the son-in-law of de la Renta and has been instrumental in expanding the business into more retail stores. I asked him why.
Thank you for coming. Well, we think there's an opportunity. I joined Oscar about 10 years ago and was very surprised to learn how US-centric our business was. And Oscar is somebody who personally was known around the world, and we thought there was a great opportunity to move into international markets. At the same time, we thought there was a great opportunity to pursue a retail store strategy to really show customers exactly what our vision for the brand was, and we're pleased with our results so far.
What about the Asian market would you say you would emphasize in what you're offering?
Well, it's funny when you say the Asian market. It's becoming increasingly difficult to generalize. Each of the markets is very different. So what is important in Singapore is not the same as what's important in Korea or mainland China. And so, for example, our bridal business is very important in Korea, likewise here in Singapore. We want to use places where we're strong to expand the brand's footprint. So we will figure out where we can do more business based on where our brand is well known. And Singapore is a place where we've established a bridal business, have some excellent ready-to-wear partners, and hope to do more.
You're one of the few fashion houses which are not owned by a conglomerate. It's still family-run. How much pressure, though, does that put on the business? Because you're competing against some pretty deep pockets when you look at some of the other conglomerates that own brands.
Well, I have to say, there are some times when I look at the advertising budgets and the ability to command real estate that some of the conglomerates can do that I'm a little envious of. But I think by and large, we offer a proposition to people that is a bit different than some of the bigger conglomerates, and our family approach is something that not only applies to people who are literally in our family, but to all the people that work with us. And so I think by and large, our status as an independent creates a tremendous amount of advantage in terms of attracting people. And we're very happy proceeding as a family-owned business.
But if you were approached to be bought, surely you would look at that?
Look, I think that at the end of the day, we're capitalists, and we would listen to what anyone has to say. We have no plans to do anything. I think that you sell a business when you're out of ideas, and we have plenty of ideas.
So coming back to those ideas, moving into retail, how hard is it, though, to go from, say, designing for first ladies and for high fashion being sold at very, very high prices to make that transition into more of the retail sector where, how does that differ both in terms of the design, but also just in terms of the pricing?
Well, look, I think that as to the design, you're probably better to ask Oscar But I think that the challenges, whether it's wholesale or retail, whether it's the United States or markets around the world, at the end of the day, Oscar's trying to make sure that women look beautiful. On my end, we're trying to offer something that's good value. Good value doesn't mean inexpensive, but good design at an appropriate price for what the customer needs, how she wants to live her life.
It sounds like the design is still very much run by your father-in-law, Oscar.
Absolutely.
What about succession planning there?
Well, we're blessed with a great team. So Oscar has many assistants, some of whom have worked with him for many years, some of whom are new, all of whom are important to what Oscar does. Oscar very much solicits the opinions of a broad group of people as he approaches design. So I don't think Oscar has any plans to make any big changes anytime soon. And again, we're blessed to have a team that's very talented and lets us keep doing what we're doing.
But I guess anytime you have a brand which is associated with a designer, he must have to stop at some point. Who would, I guess, take on the mantle? Would it be his son? Would it be an outside designer that would come in? I
think it really depends on when Oscar decides that he wants to stop doing what he's doing. And depending upon where we are on that day, we'll figure out what the right way forward is. Again, I think that fortunately, if that happened tomorrow, we have a great group of people in our office who know very well how to design for our customers around the world.
So what's it like working for your father-in-law?
You know, I thought a lot about whether I not only wanted to go to work every day with my wife, but my wife's family. A lot of people asked me if I was nuts. But I wasn't nuts. It's been a lot of fun. We've done a lot of interesting things. We've had a lot of success. We still got a lot of work to do. So I've enjoyed it immensely. You know, Oscar, I'm a big believer that business is ultimately an apprenticeship, regardless of where you are. And the reason that I decided to join the company was I didn't think that I could pass up the opportunity to work with Oscar. He is somebody who has, well, next year we'll celebrate our 50th anniversary, and I think that one doesn't not only survive but thrive in this business without knowing exactly what you're doing, and I wanted to learn from Oscar. And that has been a decision that I've not regretted one bit.
When I speak with designers, people in the creative industries, there's sometimes a tension between what they do, which is based on passion and creativity, versus the business side. Coming as you do from a financial background, how have you managed that? Because you're working with a lot of creative people. So if you say, okay, well, we need to bring the price point down on this dress for this market in this store, I want a different fabric. I mean, how is that? How do you sort of reconcile that?
You know, I hear that a lot, and so I suppose it must be the case at other companies that tension exists. It really doesn't exist in our company. I think that, Oscar's told me before, design without a commercial purpose is an art project. And we're not conducting an art project. It's a business, and so there's very much a dialogue about how we arrive at the best result, balancing the needs of what our customer wants and the commercial needs of our business. And Oscar's very much a business person, and so we approach things that way. And I wouldn't say that from time to time there aren't some disagreements, but nevertheless we find the right way forward. And Oscar, first and foremost, is very much a business person.
So finally, who's your favorite designer that you'd wear?
Who is my favorite designer? I pretty much shop at Brooks Brothers, so it's a little boring. Although I would tell you, we're very seriously considering getting into the men's business. So that may change my shopping habit.
That was Alex Boland, the CEO of Oscar de la Renta. Later in the program, we discuss why there aren't more Asian designers in the global high fashion scene. Welcome back to Talking Business with me, Linda Yu. Singaporean designers like these, which are being shown in Singapore, are the reason why it and Seoul are now among the top 10 cities for haute couture. Alongside established capitals like New York, Paris, London, and Milan, these Asian cities now boast some of the fastest growing luxury end of the market. The size of that market is expected to grow by another $100 billion within the next decade, just because of increased growth in Asian consumers. Now, to find out how the Asian fashion scene is changing, I caught up with Malaysian designer Priscilla Shanmugam and Douglas Benjamin, who runs a Singaporean fashion house that's expanding globally.
It's always been that Asia was the place where you went to produce your fashion product and got a really good price for it. Nobody really expected artisan workmanship to come from Asia. I think now it's beginning to change because all of a sudden we're seeing a lot of new Asian talent, Asian designers coming onto the scene and beginning to make a mark in the West, where it was always the other way around.
Well, Priscilla, you're one of those designers who is Asian. So what's made the change for you? When you think about entering into fashion, are you daunted by the fact that most of the big houses are Western traditionally?
No, I think it works. It works in my favor. I'm thrilled by it, and I think it's now or never. Really, the time right now belongs to Asia. And I really feel that it belongs to my generation and perhaps the generation after me. I remember when I was studying pattern making and dressmaking in London, and just being in a city like that, in a fashion capital like that, the kind of competition, the energy, the pace of it, the maturity of the industry. I could have chose to stay there if I wanted to.
Yeah, so why did you come back to Asia?
Because this is the place to be, I feel. This is the place I felt I could instigate the movement I wanted to. I could make the changes that I believe I needed to. And I felt the time was right. I don't think in Asia we've had these levels of education. We've had this amount of people who can understand and speak English, who can travel, who can afford fashion, can afford to appreciate fashion.
Yeah, so the rising incomes plays a part. Is that why you started Raoul, a fashion line that you're also expanding internationally?
Well, yes. I mean, part of the reason the cornerstone of our business is bringing brands in and franchising them in Southeast Asia, and that will always be our business. But what we wanted to do was have a business that was also able to reach out internationally so that we could export to the world and not just focus on Southeast Asia. It's been a real journey for us, with Raoul. It started many years ago, and it's only over the last couple of years that we've really gone out intentionally to gain exposure internationally in Europe and America. And I'm sure that Priscilla shares all the experiences that we've had as well. Being an Asian brand, people don't actually expect any brand from Asia. And I think, as you said, it works to our advantage because people are a bit surprised and they sit up and they say, wow,
Well, how are Asian brands different? Like are you wearing your own design?
I am. I have to. Yeah, a little bit.
Just got to cut chunks on top. Yeah, Chinese. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we're always underrepresented, and whenever there's an Asian designer, he or she tends to be an Asian American designer.
Vera Wang, somebody
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
So when designers like us come into the picture, suddenly we shake things up, and I suppose you could throw out words like authenticity, And people suddenly realize that, wow, so this is what the Asian voice of fashion is. And especially for brands like ours who have originated and continue to base ourselves here in a city like Singapore, you know, clearly one of the hubs in Asia. I think it's a very interesting dynamic that we bring to the table.
So how's your brand received because you're expanding overseas? Because it's quite a crowded field full of European and American brands.
It is very crowded. And you know, as I said, I think people have a certain expectation of Asian brands at this level. I mean, if you're not really sort of high end or really sort of mass. But I think that when they look at, you know, Raul and you as well, and then they look at the prices that we're pitching at, they're pleasantly surprised, and they don't look at us and say, oh, you know, this is an Asian brand. They look at it and they say, this is a brand, and can it compete at the same, you know, with everybody else? And then they judge you for what you put out, and the quality and the look and the fashion content and the price. And that's the only way that you can really be, you know, that's the only way that you can really work in this industry.
Understand a little bit why there hasn't been billion-dollar fashion houses out of Asia. So, for instance, why don't we see a lot of Asian haute couture like what you have in Europe with the big Italian fashion houses, or the big American ones like Ralph Lauren or Calvin Klein?
I think it's closely related to the history of the consumption of fashion, and how I think for the longest time in Asia, fashion the term fashion did not really exist the way it did in the Western world for a long time. It was just clothing, and clothing was more or less seen as a necessity. And even when it was worn as regalia for ceremonial occasions, special occasions, it was still, you only really dressed up when you needed to, whether it was religious or ceremonial, or you were going through a different phase of your life.
Doug, let me ask you, is it because Asia now is moving into middle class, there's more income, there's more consumption of luxury, and that's, in a sense, propelling Asians to think differently about fashion, and therefore could begin to see high fashion start to arise from this region?
Well, I mean, I think really the question should have been, why haven't we seen these companies developing in Asia yet? And I think I personally feel, I don't know how you do, but I think it's just a matter of time. You know, you have so many people from this part of the world who are traveling and who are, you know, going to school overseas, and they're beginning to, and they're blending their Asian cultures with what they learn from Europe and America and South America, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, I think what will happen is you won't have a specifically Asian kind of fashion, but the Asians will be able to put out fashion that is more international, because, you know, the world has become their playground. They're traveling everywhere, right? I mean, don't you feel that?
Exactly.
We don't have to be pigeonholed as
They'll start
Asians.
getting smart. It's just a matter of time, because right now we've always been at the back end, producing, manufacturing for everyone, and everyone else takes the credit. It's only a matter of time where a generation realizes that I have all these resources and materials in my backyard. I just need to get my act together. It's happening.
Of course, Asians buying fashion and luxury is really fast growing. Some of the fastest markets are actually in Asia. So Doug, tell me a little bit about the brands that you're bringing into this region. Why bring them here? Because as you say, Asians could travel internationally and buy them. You know, what kind of business model is it to bring in the brands and to sell it
Well,
locally?
I mean, you know, we principally franchise high-end and lifestyle brands in Southeast Asia, and it's always been a very good business. We've been in this business for decades. I think, you know, very importantly is, you know, Asians have a voracious appetite for fashion and for the latest trends. And that doesn't mean that they spend unwisely or indiscriminately. They're very, very informed about what they want. And it used to be that, you know, before they'd walk into the store and look around and then they'd buy something. Now they're buying it before it even gets to the store. It's on hold for them. So, you know, with the internet, with traveling, with magazines, and with all the different things that, you know, have come into being in the last 10, 15 years, people here and everywhere else in the world, I'm sure, are really, really very well educated in what is important, what is the latest, what is the most desirable to have.
Priscilla, given that there are a lot of brands in Asia, how competitive is it for a designer like you to stand
Extremely. Yeah. Extremely. I suppose for the work that I do, which is, you know, we're basically trying to carve out our own little niche of contemporary Asian women's wear, a term that I just kind of plucked out of nowhere.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Hopefully it makes sense. But exactly what Douglas said. Asians today, they don't need to buy here. And with the internet, accessibility to fashion there's no end to it. With social media, you know everything the moment it comes out. But I think it makes the playing field a lot more interesting, because you know you always have to be 2 steps ahead. And I think when you're an Asian brand and you can communicate to Asians themselves that I know what's happening, I can stay on top of it, and I can still offer you a perspective that no one else can, then you're really on a different level altogether. It's fascinating. I feel like it's a really exciting time to be doing fashion in Asia right now. I wouldn't want to be in any different decade at all.
Okay, finally, what is the biggest fashion trend in Asia? Easy question. Douglas first.
Come on,
You would know
come on,
this.
Priscilla, you
You would
first.
know this. I'm not fashionable at all, man.
Oh, come on. I think
This is Douglas territory.
no. I think, you know, you bring fashion, you bring your own interpretation of fashion in a very, very Asian way that's quite unique. And, you know, it's very rare to actually see that.
That was Priscilla Shanmugam and Douglas Benjamin. Asian designers are keen to get their piece of the billion-dollar fashion industry, but they'll be going up against established couture houses like Oscar de la Renta, who are seeking to expand in fast-growing international markets. That's all we have time for. Check out our website and me on Twitter. I'm at Linda Yu, and join us next time for more Talking Business with me, Linda Yu.